So why automate API tests? So there are several advantages to automating API testing. First one is obviously tests can run faster. So by scripting API tests, the machine will work a lot quicker than it would for a human to run tests. The test would also be a lot more reliable because using automation, the test would always run in exactly the same way. Whereas if it was a human manually testing an API, you could have somebody sick one day and somebody else testing in their place, and they might do things a little bit differently, or even the same person could change their habits over time or forget to do something. So this way, having automated tests will give us a reliable way of carrying out the same test the same way every time. Automation also allows us to run tests more often. So for example, we could run a set of tests every hour against an API service to make sure that it's still working as expected, and that may get draining on a human being having to do that every hour. Also, automation can be run overnight, which isn't something you would expect from a person. It also allows us to have higher test coverage. So by having so many automated tests running so fast, it allows us to focus effort on other time and other tasks which may help increase that coverage. So for example, creating more test cases or working on other things which also contribute to the overall quality output. In terms of disadvantages, there are some. One is that it requires an investment of time up front. Whenever a testing task is assigned for the first time, it can seem obvious that it would be quicker to test manually than it would to spend time developing a solution, which means it can be automated. So that investment of time is crucial, especially when it is something which will be repeated again and again in the future. So if it's a one-off testing task, fair enough, manual testing is the best way to go. It also requires a higher skill level. Not everybody will be comfortable with writing automated tests or creating an automation framework, so that does require that extra bit of intelligence in order to do this. Automated tests can also sometimes return false positive test results. So for example, returning a test failure when in fact the functionality works as expected. And this can happen when tests aren't maintained and become out of date. So for example, the functionality may change and may be working as expected, but if the test isn't updated, then the test will return a failure. Similarly, if something goes down, or if there is the test isn't a reliable test, so it's a bit flaky and doesn't always return as expected, then it could be the actual test which has a problem rather than the API service. Another disadvantage is that tests may require maintenance, and that can be time consuming, so that's something that has to be factored in. And after all this, exploratory testing may still be required, so you could argue, why do automated testing if there's still some manual testing required? But overall, I would suggest that automation is best because it allows us to test more often, more thoroughly, and frees us up to focus on other things like other tasks, or even backing this up with exploratory testing, which overall will result in more testing against the product and a much higher quality of output.